while your day is winding down. They're just getting started. This is South Coast Tonight with Chris McCarthy and Marcus Farrow. They've got you covered on all the news of the day, from local issues to politics on both sides of the aisle. This is the place where the movers and shakers come to be heard, to listen, and where they're held accountable. This is South Coast Tonight on WBSM.
Welcome to South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus. Chris will not be joining us tonight. He'll be back on Friday, but we're joined by New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. Hey, Mayor Mitchell. How are you?
Great to be back. It's great to be back. Yeah, it's been I don't know, about a month. I think I was in here last.
Yes, yeah, it was about a month ago. Since then, there's been an election. You've been to the UK, and there's an open city council seat. So let's talk about some of that.
Yeah.
How was your trip to the UK pitching offshore wind?
Yeah, it was a long ride for a relatively short stay, but I think it was worth it. So I was invited to speak at what's called the Offshore Wind Northeast Conference, which is an annual conference in the area that's generally known as the northeast of England, which is centered by Newcastle. That's the biggest city. So people might remember Newcastle from the beer, or because that's where all the coal is from, right? So, so the conference itself. So we're there for 4 days. The conference was 2 days, and you spent the other time doing a port tour and then meeting with companies. So all in all, I think it was my biggest takeaway is that we in New Bedford are, on the right track with offshore wind. We're doing all the right things. I learned some stuff along the way, too, because it's been a while since we had gone over and looked at any of those ports or talked to those companies. Had been since the pandemic. We hadn't been over there since the pandemic. But the conference itself is one of the largest in Europe of its type for the industry, about 900 people. And it turns out that I was the only American who was invited to speak. So it gave me the opportunity to make an unrebutted argument that New Bedford's the best place to invest. So I, did my sales pitch about, not only how great a place New Bedford is to live, but also how well set up it is for every type of maritime business, including offshore wind. So I think that went well. We got a lot of attention that way, and frankly, you didn't hear any kind of any discussion of any other American port other than New Bedford.
That's great.
So that's all encouraging, and then we'll continue to follow up as it goes along.
Why was that you were the only American invited to the conference?
Jeez, I should take offense at that question. Like, why you?
No, that's not. No. I'm just saying
there's 330 million Americans, and they picked you.
It's a growing industry. It's a growing industry. New Bedford was the only city invited. I thought it would be an opportunity for you to pat yourself on the back, actually.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, sorry I missed your cue, Marcus. No, I mean, we've been working it pretty hard for many years because we've recognized that, as an older industrial city, you got to really hustle for opportunities to attract investment. And it's been, we've been at this for a while with offshore wind, and people have been waiting for it, and we've kept our eye on the ball. And I think what people will start to see next year with the development of the Vineyard Wind Project and the arrival of components and all that stuff on the waterfront, they'll say, yeah, okay, well, this is what he's been talking about all the time. It's a big industry in Europe. There are over 6,000 turbines turning in the North Sea, right? 6,000. There are a total of 7 in U.S. waters, right? So all that is coming over and starting next year with the Vineyard Wind Project. There are 17 active projects on the east coast of the U.S. right now, and they're moving ahead. So, but there is with all of it moving over, with all of it developing here, there's a whole lot of investment and therefore jobs up for grabs. We've known this for a while, and that's why we've been relentless in promoting New Bedford. So it's not an accident that when they talk about the U.S. at these conferences, they talk about New Bedford before they talk about any other place. We've been working really hard to make that happen.
I think that's an important thing to note when we talked a little bit about it off air, because there's this whole Commonwealth wind snag where they're trying to renegotiate some parts of their purchase power agreement with the Department of Public Utilities. But Vineyard Wind over here in New Bedford, they're moving forward.
Right, the first project. Yep.
And we're going to start seeing the turbines pretty soon, right?
April is when they're projected to start. They're already putting the cable down now. You can't see that because obviously it's out at sea, but the cable's already going down.
That's great. So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. So I know it's something that's been talked about for a while and we've covered it, but I think it's good to also, when we're talking about this, explain some of the, you talked about the jobs and all of that. What's the public good that offshore wind brings to the communities?
Yeah. So if you're a place that hosts, if you're a port in particular that hosts offshore wind or any other maritime business, a place where they tie up boats, where they do their work on the shoreline, you're going to be a place that employs more people, that will have employment opportunities for people that want them. And we know that good jobs lead to better lives, right? And that's so. Whereas a place that has had chronically high unemployment for many, many years, it's gotten better in the last few years. But look, we're a city that's, that like many other cities that are not part of major metros in the U.S., we've had to work harder to get ahead, and so what this is just an unusual situation in which you have, in our case, an older industrial city that's not part of another big metro area that is getting an opportunity for a significant infusion of investment, and that will pave the way for jobs and for. Not just episodically, and not just jobs that that are low paying, but jobs that are good and jobs that will be sustained because these wind farms will go on for decades. And so that's really the key, I think. And so there are lots of other places along the East Coast that are vying for that investment. And so our approach is multifold, right? We want to build good infrastructure, and we've done that. And there's a ton of infrastructure that has been built in the last few years that we've been able to marshal through a variety of public and private sources, right? So you got to have the infrastructure available, and then when that's in place, you got to have the workforce. And so one of the big selling points for New Bedford is not only our existing institutions and not only our existing seafaring workforce, but all of which are really strong, but also the new institution that we'll have on the waterfront, which is the National Offshore Wind Institute, the Bristol Community College's institute that they're building right on Herman Melville Boulevard, which will be the first training center for offshore wind in the U.S. And so that's the second facet. The third facet is innovation, right? All these companies have a lot of dough, and they're always looking to increase their profits by, among other things, lowering their costs. And so if they can use technology in the way of sensors or artificial intelligence or just better boats, they'll make those investments. And so if we have a setting here in which entrepreneurship is encouraged and flourishes, that will help our standing. That will attract folks here to do their thing. So that's another big facet. And the last one is just of all of our efforts is marketing and promotion, which is exactly what I was doing in England last week, which is we got to spread the gospel of New Bedford everywhere where it matters. To companies that might invest here and anybody else, so they can see that this place is the center of activity.
So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. So we've got an outgoing gubernatorial administration and a new incoming gubernatorial administration. So the question I have is, how would you rate the Baker-Polito administration on helping New Bedford make offshore wind a reality, and how do you think that the Healy-Driscoll administration will be in that helping along with that task?
Yeah, I think we've had a good working relationship with the governor and the lieutenant governor, in particular, when it has come to facilitating investment in port infrastructure, right? So, we're actively talking about that right now because there is money available, and we've worked hard to not plan and to design our projects so that they can be shovel ready, as the term is used, so that when the money's there, we can raise our hands and say, spend it here. And so the Lieutenant Governor has been very good about that. We've been aided by the funds that they've invested in dredging as well. So you can have the best pier, but if the water's too shallow to get to it because the harbor hasn't been dredged, so it's pretty much useless, right? So that dredging has been a big part of what the Baker folks have been able to do for us, about $32 million in berth dredging that they've given us. And then there's investments in a number of the port facilities that they've committed to, Leonard's Wharf and the State Pier and a number of others. So that's all put us in a stronger position. I think overall for the Baker administration, less than the Patrick administration, less so for the Patrick administration, it's been about climate. I think and promoting climate adaptation and developing renewable sources of electricity for Massachusetts. I think there was a heavier emphasis in the Patrick administration on economic development, and more particularly on competing against other states for business. And so, that's. That we are, I will say, I mean, my mind is like, as much as we want to promote renewable energy in New Bedford through offshore wind, and by promoting offshore wind, for us, it's been primarily about economic development, about creating jobs here for our residents. And it's not to say that there's dealing with climate change is a distant second. It's really important, but the efforts have been geared around economic development, and more specifically against competing against everybody else. So with the next administration, what we hope is that there will be a greater emphasis on putting Massachusetts, and particularly New Bedford, in a greater position to succeed in that competition. And so I've had many conversations with now Governor-elect Healy about that, and so I think she's I've known her for a long time, and I think I think it's fair to say is a very competitive person. So I think she'll be inclined to support those efforts.
She strikes me as a competitive person.
She is a competitive person. Yeah.
So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. Chris will be back on Friday. So, Mayor Mitchell,
I hope he's listening.
Yeah.
Chris McCarthy, if you're out there.
He's not showing up in protest. He says, I will not appear with that man until he tells me whether or not he's running again in 2023.
I know it's coming. I know the question's coming. Yeah.
So, well, speaking of elections that you might comment on,
whole different category.
Yeah. So Hugh Dunn, Ward 3 City Councilor, he announced his resignation here on South Coast Tonight, actually, 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. I don't know. It all blends together. So there's an open seat. There's a special election. What kind of candidate are you looking for that you hope would run? Or not candidate you're looking for. What kind of city councilor do you think are you looking for to fill that seat?
Well, what I would say about Ward 3 is what I'd say about any ward, and that is, ward councilor has to be responsive, right? It can be a lot of work. You get lots of calls from constituents, and people want to know what's going on. They want their interests vindicated, right? They want stuff done, and so it turns out that the ward councilors tend to have more interaction with the administration on constituent-related issues, right?
Sure.
So, the proverbial pothole type of issues, right?
Yeah.
So you need someone who's willing to put that time in. Yeah. But of course, the council weighs in on far more complex issues than just potholes and constituent calls, right? Yeah. So as important as those are. So, when it comes to municipal finance, when it comes to ensuring that the city is financially stable and growing, and that we have policies in place that enable us to deliver the services that our residents are entitled to, you need someone who does their homework, right? And that means you got to commit the time, right? Reading the materials that the administration submits to the city council every 2 weeks or something new, not and when it comes time to make decisions about policy, not necessarily gravitating in the direction of the person who's hollering the loudest, but just really sitting back and thinking things through, getting opinions from both sides, and then exercising your best judgment. And that at the end of the day, that's all you can do.
So he was in the council for about 5 or so years. What was your evaluation of his tenure? How was it to work with Councilor Dunn in those last 5 years?
Well, I think we we're able to move a lot of stuff along on economic development, especially in Ward 3, especially on the waterfront. In fact, we just had a very, very recent example with the council's passage last week of the redevelopment plan for the Hicks-Logan neighborhood. I mean, the Hicks-Logan neighborhood, it's not, I hate to say this, but I think most people would agree, if not everybody, is probably the most distressed neighborhood in the city. It really isn't much of a neighborhood left in that part of Ward 3.
Yes.
So the city has long tried to figure out how to rejigger that area, not rejigger, but put it in a position where there's less blight and there are more opportunities for investment for all sorts of things, housing, new businesses, and so forth. And that it's been a long time in coming to develop that plan to bring back the city's redevelopment authority, so it can play a positive role in that effort. Redevelopment authorities have the ability to assemble land and to work with developers in ways that the city can. So Hugh was just unequivocally supportive of that effort, and that's especially important because it's his ward, but also there may be some people, because of the history of the redevelopment authority in the city going back to the early 70s, who might say, redevelopment authority, wait a minute, they knocked a lot of stuff down, and so it's not the redevelopment authority of yesteryear. Right? I don't want everybody to know that, but I think he was hugely supportive of that, and similarly, also in Ward 3. Ward 3 is a sort of a long ward.
It's not that contiguous.
No, right? So it cuts through a lot of different types of neighborhoods and areas. But the golf course project was something I don't think could have gotten done without his support. We needed the support of the ward council, and he understood that as a city that is largely built out, New Bedford does not have a lot of land to put into play for large commercial development, right, for factories and warehouses and so forth. And that, taking what might strike some people as a pretty, I don't say radical, but a really sort of assertive step in taking part of a golf course that we all love and turning it into commercial real estate. So it took some backbone, and so I think that those are some of the things that I think that will go down as his major contributions to the city.
So speaking of that golf course project, I know you had to rework the RFPs because there was some difficulties getting some bids. Where are you at, or where's the city at on that process? Yeah,
we're sort of in the middle of a pause period, which I think will last a matter of several weeks. And so the reason for this is, I think most folks would accept the proposition, which is also backed up by some market studies that we've done, that part of the Whaling City Municipal Golf Course is very marketable for large commercial properties, kind of like the ones where we have in the New Bedford Business Park, right? Mm-hmm. That could employ an awful lot of folks. The question is, like, how do you activate that site while retaining and preserving the golf course, the operation of the golf course? And so what we had in the RFP was a provision that said, you can't develop the property until the golf course is all rejiggered, but you got to pay us up front. And so, I think some of the developers may have, had some cold feet about that, especially given the timing, right? War in Ukraine, inflation, all that stuff.
Sure.
So what we've done.
Oh, that's right. I made a joke about that. You said it was Putin's fault.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. So what we've done is we've gone back. We've hired a consultant to go and talk to the prospective developers, the ones who show an interest in it. How would you change the RFP? What needs to change in the RFP in order for you, to bid on it? And then, in light of that feedback, we'll take a look at the request for proposals, the RFP, and modify it accordingly, and then we'll put it back out on the street. And I think we'll. I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to get some good bids on it then. So this will play out over the course of the spring.
So I actually was talking to Hugh about it. He said that you could envision even a singular buyer of the whole property, like an Amazon or something. Is that something in the realm of possibility? Something you're looking for?
Yeah. I don't know if it would be in Amazon, but it would if some big, pharmaceutical company, wanted to buy the site and employ, tons of people and whatever. That would be great. That's a matter of timing. I mean, the other thing, there are other options, right? We could just hold on to it and develop the entryway and then just wait for the right company to come along, right? That's not a crazy strategy. It may be one that I think we'd all lose patience with eventually if we didn't, hit a home run.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of the strategy that's kind of been in place in the business park. If you think of the business park as being, it was built in the late 50s, right? And on a swamp before the Clean Water Act was passed, right? So if that had not been so, that we'd never have been allowed to build in that area. I just note that as a footnote. But it's been around since the 60s, since the late 50s. And it's just filling now, right? There's the last plot of land is under agreement now, and so it's taken a while to fill that out. So that could be a strategy that we embrace here, which is that we'll sort of parcel this off, 20 acres, 20 acres, 20 acres, and so forth, as opposed to 100 all at once. But, we'll take a look at what these developers say to get some insight into it. The reality is this. Eastern Massachusetts, Eastern New England is a growing region, and there is and it's growing in a number of sectors, including in manufacturing and distribution, and there just isn't enough land to accommodate all of it, and so that's why this land is just going to increase in value.
It's going to be a discussion, I think, in the special election for Hugh's seat in Ward 3.
Yeah, probably.
There might be some people who may be less informed and thinking that they're going to, I'm going to stop it or whatever, and it's happening. But I think what the people in Ward 3 need to know is that their interests are being protected because there's concerns about the amount of traffic on an already heavily trafficked area. So how is this project going to be completed in a way that...
I'm glad you raised that, because you're right. It is going to be an issue, and it would be easy to say too much traffic, stop the thing, right? The reality is so I'm old enough to remember Rosie's. I don't know if you're old enough to remember, Rosie's, the restaurant at the bottom of the hill.
I don't think so.
They're betraying just how young you are, Marcus. But so Rosie's, for a while, my understanding is, like when I was in high school, it was, and someone could call in and just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for a while it was one of if it wasn't the highest grossing restaurant in the area, it was close. It was hugely popular. And it's where that gas station and convenience store. In fact, the convenience store I think is called Rosie's, and as a nod to the restaurant. But that was really busy. And then right next door you had Cinema 140. Right, those things aren't there anymore. Right, and so it's actually a less trafficked road than it used to be. Like, it's kind of overbuilt right now. So that's why cars drive so fast there. Right, so with more traffic, with more volume, it's likely the cars will have to slow down, as they do on any road.
Yeah.
And we will make sure that whatever development scenario plays out there, that there will be the right kind of traffic mitigation, right? So light signals at the right spots. We want to address how things are. We certainly want to make safer the intersection of Rockdale Avenue and Hathaway Road, which is one of the tougher intersections to negotiate in the city and has been for a long time. So we can work through this stuff. This stuff's not solving those problems are not novel problems to solve.
So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. You talked a little bit about this today. We talked a little bit about this, the new, the election that happened here in Massachusetts. We have, Paul Heroux is going to be the new sheriff of Bristol County. Just broadly, during your time as mayor, how much overlap has there been between your office and the Bristol County Sheriff's Office? And if there is any, what are you looking forward to, doing with Mayor Heroux when he assumes office in January?
Well, I certainly want to congratulate him on his victory, and it's that was a very hard-fought race, and you guys had both candidates on for a while, and that was an intense race that drew a lot of attention from outside the region, of course. And so, I'll if there's any way I can help the sheriff-elect transition into the job, I certainly would be happy to do that. We interact with the sheriff's office in a few different ways. I think, it ranges from like the road work that work release inmates do, supervision, right, cleaning up stuff and painting poles and all that, which is very helpful to us. But more fundamentally, we have to work. Our police department has to work with the sheriff's office on a number of fronts, right? So we have the regional lockup at the Ash Street Jail.
Right.
That's that, and managing that is going to continue to be important. That's obviously an older, it's like very old facility, as we all know. So that's one way we work with them. Transports from there to the hospital to St. Luke's is another facet of that part of the work. Intelligence sharing is really important, right? So, it's important for us, for our police department, to know what people we are interested in looking at who are behind bars are doing and saying, who they're interacting with, and whether there's any threat posed by virtue of what's going on behind bars, right? And then the last thing is really just, and again, this is something that the police are involved in, but also other city agencies, and that's reentry, right? So so people who are going there are not, they're going there for a max of 2.5 years, and so they get out, and then they've got to get their lives back in order, and so we have city agencies that attempt to facilitate job placement and other things to so that people get in drug treatment and so forth, so that they can get back on their feet and live gainful lives.
I don't want to get too into the weeds in correction policy, but is the Ash Street Jail been an asset for the New Bedford Police Department?
Well, it's gotten, as you probably know, it's gotten complicated with a recent court decision concerning where pretrial detainees can go, who's responsible and so forth. And I'm not about to do that. I don't know enough about the case to do it justice, but that we do need to sort of figure out a long-term arrangement for pretrial detainees, or people who are arrested here in the city by our police department. The Ash Street Jail itself is an old facility. It's not. I can't say with any level of confidence whether it can continue to operate in its current condition. My understanding is that the sheriff-elect has made some statements about whether to keep it open, and his position, as I understand, has been that he'd be inclined to close it. And I would just say, look, our expectation is that, if that's ultimately his call, but there has to be a plan behind it, because it's right smack dab in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
So that plan for, what happens to everybody who's in there, because you're not going to build another jail tomorrow. And then what does it mean for the neighborhood?
Yeah. I think he said he's open to closing it, but I think he voiced the same concerns about that. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
1420 WBSM can now be heard on 99.5 FM.
Bessie's
WBSM isn't just a broadcast. It's also a podcast. Get all of our podcasts at WBSM.com, the WBSM app, or just search WBSM on your favorite podcast provider.
Hey, welcome back. We're here with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. So actually I wanted to bring this up. We had the election here. You said the turnout was I guess suboptimal. 30-something%.
32-ish, yeah.
Do you know if that's an improvement on the last governor's election? I mean, the sheriff. I think the sheriff's election might have driven some turnout too. But
it was a little bit better. It wasn't, it's not eye popping. It doesn't, like, I didn't go back and check, but it doesn't feel like it was that much more. It can go back and look, but I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine it was, and it was abysmal in the preliminary, right? It was like 13%, I think.
13.5, yes. Yeah, very low, very low. Yeah, it's just, we just
fifth lowest in the state, I think it was. But
fifth lowest in the state is right.
Yeah, but we've talked about the importance of getting a vote share here that will make elected officials need to respect the region, right? And there was some issues that happened on. Now you weren't here, but there were some issues that happened on Election Day. There was some voting machines that were broken. Last time there was like numbers that were late to report because of some sort of error that happened with the elections office. We had people call in during elections day and say, hey, there's ballots on the, people are asking us to leave ballots on the chair and on the floor and all of that. So is there an issue with the administration of the elections office right now? Is there something that needs to be done about it? Yeah.
Yeah, so, even though I had voted early and wasn't in town for the election, we certainly had done some planning beforehand, and because there are a number of city agencies involved in every election, police department, emergency management, and so forth, schools, library. So, and certainly I was staying on top of what was going on here that week, Tuesday and Wednesday. I think there are a couple of things that people need to understand. So first off, this is the most important thing to say. Every vote in the city was counted.
Sure.
Every vote was counted, right?
Yeah.
So, we've heard, things, and I've seen nothing to give me any pause that wasn't the case. But, we there's a lot of new stuff now with elections, right? So there's the whole arrangement with early voting and how it gets reported is very prescribed by state law. There are certain, depending on when a ballot comes in, it gets counted at a certain time, and if it comes in at a different time, it gets counted at a different time, and so forth. And so what it has done is generate a ton of work for every election office around the state, but especially in the cities, right? Even despite the relatively lower turnout that we, alas, are experiencing. And so, so I think there's that. I think and we also live in a time when the administration of elections across the country are a charged topic, right? People are kind of on edge, right? We see, as we saw in, I think it was Arizona or other places, there were, men who had, automatic rifles or semi-automatic rifles right near the voting locations, right? You didn't have anything like that here, but it is a matter of real concern. So in under those circumstances, you start to hear things that may not be totally grounded in truth. So there were no broken machines. There were 6 machines that were jammed. And they were unjammed, right? Big difference, right? Sure. And again, all the votes got counted. And so, and the other thing is that that's actually a fairly ordinary event. They get jammed, and sometimes, especially when you have a longer ballot with some of these machines, as we did this year with lots of folks on the ballot, making it actually physically longer. With certain machines that things get stuck. That's the explanation I got. But bottom line for me is, did all the votes get counted? Yes. Yeah. Right? And then show me. Yes. Okay. They all got counted. The one thing that I'd say I think we do need to improve on, and we're working on, so 2 things I'd say. I really think there needs to be more resources in the elections office, right? The counting of early votes is overwhelming. In a city of 100,000, we have 3 permanent employees in the elections office, 3 full-time employees. That's it.
Right.
Right. that's not enough, right? So we've got to figure that out so things are turned around faster so people in your position can hear about results earlier, right, which is what you want.
Exactly.
The other thing is, there needs to be some working out of the reporting out of the results, right? So we had a situation last week where, the vote totals were greater than the sum of all 6 wards.
I called Holly about that yesterday or 2 days ago, and I was like, "What's going on here? Oh my God!"
Yes, is it me or is it not adding up?
No, it was striking.
And the reason is, and this is just sort of the automation of some of the reporting. It's what wasn't reported. What were the early votes that fall into a category called advanced deposits, right? Well,
yes.
Which is like the first set of early votes that come in that are counted ahead of time, and that column wasn't reported, so there was a gap. So if you added up in New Bedford's case, all the votes cast and listed for wards 1 through 6, it didn't add up to the total at the end because there was this other category that was missing, which is the early, this one batch of the earliest of the early votes. So that has to get fixed. People look at that and you're like, what's going on here, right? So that's a normal reaction. And you weren't the only member of the media who's good at arithmetic, right? Others called us up and said, "Hey, wait a minute." So I think that's got to get fixed. There's no, look. So
I made a joke that Bob Kazera is still the rep. Actually, we've been doing it wrong all these years. All right, Mayor Mitchell, I've got to take this break, and then that's going to finish out the hour. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a break, and I'll be back.
The WBSM app is
Hey, welcome back. That was New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. Always appreciate when he comes on. Always a good discussion. So we're going to finish out this hour, and then for the rest of the hour, I'll take your calls, take your app chats here at on South Coast Tonight. We've had a lot happen in the last few days, obviously. The state elections are over. Apparently, the presidential elections are well on their way, and Ward 3 elections are well on their way as well. So there's a lot to talk about, and hoping to talk with you about it at 508-996-0500. That's how you can get. That's how you can get on the program this evening. So, that's pretty much it for the 7 o'clock hour. Again, I'll see you guys in the 8 o'clock hour. We can talk about the, Trump's deck. We can still talk about Trump, whether or not he's going to win, whether or not you support him. I heard some people today, when I had the opportunity to listen, we're still supportive of Trump. I'm reading some app chat messages that say people are supportive of Trump still. Some callers called in last night to tell us that they still support the President Trump. I've had other callers who are Republicans say they support DeSantis, or DeSantis or somebody else. So definitely interested in your opinions on that. But what we'll do is we'll take a news break here. When we get back, we'll take your calls at 508-996-0500.